that goes beyond just a collection of pieces, but everything is hopefully meaningfully constructed and placed, you know, for the right reasons.
How do you approach, you know, you mentioned how when you're writing for films and video games, there's some things you have to do that aren't necessarily the same as what you would do with a concert piece. So for you, do you approach the film or the video game differently than if you were writing just for a concert piece? What are the differences for you?
I mean, the major difference is that, you know, your job in scoring a film or a video game is to enhance the primary product. The primary product is the game or the film, right? And if that means setting your ego aside and just writing, like, you know, just a few held out notes here and there, you know, and just not doing anything spectacular, if that's what the film needs, you got to do that, right? That said, a lot of my most successful, best pieces were, they were written for video game projects, but they were written for menu screens of video game projects, where essentially all the creative prompt that you have is just kind of the flavor of the game and a static menu screen, right? You know, the opening menu screen of a video game is probably the most flexible media scoring gig that you could have, because there's no time limitation on it. You don't have dramatic beats to hit. You can write a vocal piece if you want, a choral piece, because there's no dialogue to get in the way of. You can kind of do anything. And you're encouraged to write really, really great music, because guess what? Anytime that game gets fired up, they're going to hear your piece, right? So either you make it not obnoxious so that the people don't want to, you know, turn off the music right away and you know, do whatever, or you just make a really damn fine piece of music, right? And I try to do the latter. I think, you know, whenever I, you know, to me, those are plum scoring gigs, like scoring a menu screen of a video game. That's the type of placement, if you want to use, you know, our industry lingo, that can spin off so many opportunities for you.
You once again had that opportunity on yet another Civilization game. Just talk a little bit about your most recent, well, and you had another song cycle in between the two, with The Drop That Contains the Sea. So you've had now 3 major works, the most recent just released very recently, that came from Civilization 6, right, to Shiver the Sky. So talk a little bit about that.
So, you know, like I said, like if I write something good, I'm going to find a way to repurpose it somehow, right? I thought that the main theme that I wrote for Civilization 6, the Sogno di Volare chorale theme, was one of the, probably the best melody that I've written. You know, it just feels so, you know, it's like what Copland said about a melody. There's something that's sort of inevitable about a good melody, right? And this is one of those situations where I'm like, oh, this feels just so stately and grand and just magnificent, right? So I took a page from my old playbook, which was to take a hit song from a gaming menu screen and look at that song and think to myself, well, if we're going to expand it into a multi-movement concert work, you know, what's that going to sound like? So that's the genesis for my new album, which just came out on Decca 2 weeks ago. To Shiver the Sky. And the reception has been very good so far. I think it's currently #1 on Billboard. I'm sure I'm going to get booted off very soon, but you know, it's good. It's going well so far.
Yeah, I tell you, all 3 of your major works I have thoroughly enjoyed, and this last one, it almost feels like you took a turn to, okay, this is still me that's writing this music, but I want to add, there's a little more heaviness at times, and at times like Germanic kind of writing coming through that I think really sets it apart from some of the other work that you've done that says, oh, look, he's taking little bits of what has appeared in his earlier works, stylistically, ways that you were writing things, and he's expanded on these to show that's not all I do. And you've shown this other side to yourself that I think is it's very exciting to listen to, and I think it's at a very high quality. What was your choice for the text that you used for this one?
Well, I mean, you know, before I answer that question, I'll go back to an earlier point. You know, this is stylistically heavier, quite a bit more classical, a lot richer and denser than my previous albums. a lot of times my previous albums feel like I wrote a fun choral piece like Baba Yetu, and the orchestra is there as a, like it's an arrangement, it's almost like a pop arrangement to support a pop song in a way. This was conceived very operatically. Opera is kind of a passion of mine, especially in recent years, as I've been starting to have some conversations with some big opera companies, potentially to write an opera. And this was a way for me to start flexing those muscles a little bit. I mean, I brought in two fantastic opera singers, Danielle Denise, who's huge, and Penne Patti, who is, I swear to God, he's a young Pavarotti. Like he's going places. And he was introduced to me by Universal. With To Shiver the Sky, it is based on my Civilization 6 theme song. Thinking this is really my opportunity to build upon this sort of rich classical sound that the Civ 6 theme song had, and sort of embrace it and add it to my arsenal, such that, when you look at the catalog of Christopher Tin, it's not just a bunch of world music stuff with orchestra. Now, we've got these very serious orchestral pieces, and very serious, operatic pieces and stuff like that. Right, there are still the hallmarks of what makes a Christopher Tin album, which is, a large cast of different styles of voices, different languages, narrative through lines that connect everything together, a concept that holds it together, connective tissue, musical connective tissue between movements, lyrical connective tissue. I mean, it just comes from a lot of sitting down, researching, finding what I like, finding what connects to other things. And I mean, this kind of goes back to what we talked about earlier on, where it's like, I majored in English and I did a master's degree with a very funny long name called Interdisciplinary Studies in Humanities, where we sat down and we studied, for example, how the railroad, invention of the railroad, affected Marcel Proust's writings of In Search of Lost Time, or like helped him shape his sensations. Then it was this whole master's course connecting the dots between all the artistic disciplines. And that's what really gets me excited, connecting the dots, right? So, when you talk to young composers, you say, then they say, how do you develop your own voice? That's kind of a hot topic, right? How does one find their voice? I think it's a very valid and important question. It's not one of these things where you sit down and say, okay, this is my voice. You don't pick a voice. Your voice is who you are based on your interests and your background, right? So all of this stuff that you talk about, these stamps of my fingerprints on these albums, they are my voice. I'm the guy who loved the connective tissue in a book like James Joyce's Ulysses. That was very influential for me in college. I'm the guy who liked listening to musical theater and opera early on, which has a lot of recurring motifs, and has this sort of connective tissue. Oh, or the guy who's listening to the soundtrack, or the Star Wars soundtracks incessantly, right? I mean, talk about leitmotif and connective tissue. So that's kind of why my stuff has this sort of like this aspect to it, that goes beyond just a collection of pieces, but everything is hopefully meaningfully constructed and placed, for the right reasons.
What does the future look like for you? I know that you have this album that just came out. You've mentioned a little bit about you have some ideas of things that you might want to be doing, but is there anything you can share with us of something you're currently working on or that's coming up in the future?
I mean, I've got a couple of games coming up that I can't talk about because that industry is so, but on the sort of the artist record side, I guess you'd call it, there are a few projects in the pipeline. Some of them are instrumental. Some of them go back to the world music hybrid sound that, got me on the map. And the biggest one is a plan for my fourth album, which is, it's going to have environmentalist overtones to it. Like most of my music has overtones of something or other that I believe in, but most aren't sort of blatant or explicit about it. I've been thinking about doing something about birds, particularly species of birds that we've driven to extinction. And it might take the form of a requiem mass, sort of like honoring the loss of these species. It might be something like that. I'm still workshopping the idea internally. Maybe if I do a Kickstarter for this one, I'll ask my backers, hey, what do you think? Give me some ideas here. But that's going to be, we're slating that for a release in probably a couple of years. It takes a couple of years to put these things together. They're very big undertakings, as you can imagine. But I do have one idea for an opera. Well, I should actually call it an opera cycle. I know, talk about like ambitious. I have one particular idea that I'm very excited about that I can't share, but it's moving along. I'm in discussions with a very good opera company, one of the best actually. And then the pandemic hit, right? And opera companies got shuttered everywhere. So remains to be seen what's going to go on with that. But there's no shortage of ideas. It's a shortage of time, right? Everything else in life.
If you're driving along the coast, beautiful sunny day, convertible top down, what's playing on the radio?
Probably M83.
What sound or noise do you love?
The sound of my baby's voice.
What sound or noise do you hate?
I live next to some very noisy neighbors, and I absolutely hate the guy. And anytime I hear his voice in the middle of the night going out to his balcony and having a conversation or just waking me up, I just want to strangle him. So
okay.
It's a real personal answer.
Yeah. If music were erased from the face of the earth, what profession would you choose?
I would probably be, well, actually, I was interested in being an architect at one point. So it would probably be something artistic. Unfortunately, I'm not as good of an architect or designer or visual artist or writer as I am as a composer. I don't think I would have found as much success in one of those fields, but I probably would have gone into something like that.
My last question is more of the downer question. When you die, what would you like your tombstone to read?
Christopher Tan, he wrote more than just Baba Yetu.
Well, you have written a lot more than Baba Yetu, and all of it is great. Thank you for joining me today, sharing your journey and your story with us. I really appreciate you being here today.
Well, thank you for having me, Stephen. Hey, and thanks for the cool coffee mug and the cookies.
Yes, thank you for being here. It's been wonderful, and everybody, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching. For more great videos, subscribe to the Maestro Fox YouTube channel. To learn more about the Maestro, visit StephenAllenFox.com.